All right, beautiful people. So we are in the mind of Haize, and I got a couple of things to talk to you guys about. The first one that I want to talk about is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and so this is not a review of the show or the or specific episode. This is kind of just what I'm left with, and you'll see that running through as a theme throughout this episode. But the themes of race in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I touched on it a little bit because they got into it, and I think it was either the second or the third episode. Um, but it's really been getting deeper and deeper as the show goes on, and especially in the most recent episode. So in that episode, we get a character. His name's Isaiah Bradley, who was somebody who went through the or was experimented on with the super soldier serum, the same one that Steve Rogers was experimented on with, and the the thing that's so powerful about this, and while it has parallels to the Tuskegee experiments and just other things that have happened, the thing that really stuck out to me in this, and if you pay attention to the themes in the MCU in general, is that Isaiah Bradley, this character, was jailed, experimented on, made to disappear for doing the exact same thing that Steve Rogers did in the original in Captain America: The First Avenger, and by that I mean he um his team was captured as POWs, prisoners of war, and rather than let them die, he decided to go rogue and went in and busted them out. Same thing Steve Rogers did, where Steve Rogers was celebrated for it. Isaiah Bradley was jailed and made to disappear, and they buried his story. And that's something that we've seen themes of over the course of Black history. And this is one of the dark sides of this country that we don't talk about a lot. And so, yes, he was experimented on. He showed the scars, and we saw what that did to Sam. Sam, who was already thinking that he wasn't necessarily worthy of being Captain America, or if he even wanted to pick up that mantle that Steve Rogers left him when he left him the shield, that kind of sent him down this road of, let me just go back home and take care of my family. Like, forget all this for a while. And so, a great episode. And then even in that, and this is the thing that, I talked about it a little bit on the Breaks Radio where we talked about allyship. And so we get a great conversation with him in the Winter Soldier with Bucky um in this, and where he said that when Steve, aka Captain America, told him what he was planning on doing, that he doesn't think that either one of them understood what it was going to mean for a black man to carry the shield of Captain America. And so, and that's something that I think that it's that bias that people, you don't know what you don't know, right? So to say, and I think we need to remember that sometimes when it comes to our white brethren, is that they can never, let me not say they don't always, they can never truly understand what it's like to be black in this country. They have ideas, they can relate to how you feel about certain things, right? They can relate to feelings of being shamed and whatever else. I'm sure they can understand the feeling of that, but they won't understand the exact thing that we go through. And so in the Mind of Hayes segment, a lot of what I'm talking about is how black people are the black struggle, how it's depicted. And I think where as the Falcon and the Winter Soldier get it very more respectful in my way, and in a way that feels more true to life. And that's one thing that's been great about the MCU in general, is that the way that it's depicted as being real, like they try to make it as real as possible. And so those themes being in that show, and the way that they that were, and then even in him talking to his sister, and like so and again, let me rein it back in. So in the court, like we get Sam saying to him, I'm sorry, Bucky saying to Sam that we didn't understand what it was going to mean for a black man to carry that shield. Sam responds with the shield has, and this is, I'm paraphrasing, this isn't exactly how it was a longer conversation, but saying that the shield has a complicated legacy. And I think what that means is that the duality in what America represents versus what is behind the scenes and underlying narrative in this country at all times. And I think depicted as well greatly by Isaiah Bradley saying that no self-respecting black man would ever want to be Captain America. And then when you look at his nephews, Cass and Ash, I believe is what their names are. Um, but when they see that shield, them playing with it, they and at one point one of his nephews tracing the outline of the star and knowing what that represents. And I think the thing that overall in this country is that what America claims to represent isn't always what's in the history and what's shown. And they're doing a great job at depicting that in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And even him and his sister saying, "Are you going to let Isaiah Bradley make that decision for you?" And I think what a key thing in what they did in this is that they made sure that having Anthony Mackie character and Sam say, like, had I went through what he went through, I would probably be just where he is. But and that goes back to kind of the theme of what I like to do with this podcast, is showing that you don't necessarily have to agree to understand somebody's standpoint. And that, I think, is ultimately what like comes about in this conversation, the conversations that happen over the course of this show. And so I want to like really commend Marvel for like because Marvel could have done this show. They could have overall like, and even with Anthony taking over the Shield, they could have completely eliminated the race aspect. They could have painted it as this whole thing of race doesn't matter, and they could have not touched on those racial themes at all. And I want to commend them for doing so, and doing so in such a respectful manner to me. And I know there's some people that would disagree with that, and that's perfectly fine. Again, this is the start of the conversation. This is not the end all be all. But just for me, it means so much to have the MCU, and I know it's not in the film for people who want to detract from that, but to depict this and pay respect to a lot of what's actually happened in true to life. So that's my thought on that. But on the flip side of that, and this is where there's a couple of different conversations I want to have with this. So the series Them on Amazon, how can I say this in a respectful way? The show is beautiful. The show is shot masterfully. Even you can tell there's a lot that went into the story. My issue with this show is kind of the flip side, where I feel, and again, you may feel differently on that, and that is perfect on this, and that's perfectly fine. Whereas I feel as the MCU is doing it in a very respectful manner in how they're depicting the plight of what it means to be black in this country. Them, on the other hand, seems like to capitalize on the black experience and black struggles. And by that, this is what I mean. And this is spoiler alert. Sorry if you haven't seen all 10 episodes of them yet. Slight spoiler alert. I'm not going into like any as much specifics. But the issue that I personally have with them is that I feel like this showing them could have been so great, either if they made it true horror without necessarily making the racism what it is, or if they would have just depicted, because the black story is like, it's horror in of itself. The fact that a lot of this stuff happened, that's horror in of itself. The thing that I have a problem with in this series, Them, is that they depict it as the devil made me do it, right? That the racism, the devil made me do it. I would never, these people would never, and even in one of the characters, and for people who watch the full show will know who I'm talking about, I'm trying to avoid going into complete spoilers with that, is that this character, this black family comes into town back in the day, and this white, I believe he's a reverend pastor, he welcomes them. And then as the devil, in this case, the literal devil, then kind of manipulates him and turns him into a racist to where he kills this family. And so to me, the black experience, like I said, is horrific enough than to blame it on the devil made me do it. To me, that is a slap in the face to the actual racism that happened just because people do bad shit. This whole thing of the devil made me do it. Listen, I don't like blaming everything on the devil outside of it being racism or whatever else. I don't like it being this thing of like when the good things happen, we put it on God. When bad things happen, we put it on the devil. And yes, I'm a Christian, I'm religious, but at the same time, people have the power of choice. And some of these things that happen are just people deciding and choosing, whether it's because they were taught that, whether it was because of their own ignorance, them not being aware, but they chose to be and act and do these heinous acts, and to just label it to the devil made me do it, and maybe that's just me possibly looking too deep into the themes, it bothered me. And it took me out of the show, and that's my opinion on it. And so that leads me to a couple of different things. While we're still on the Hollywood thing, is that I'm in a filmmakers group, black filmmakers at that, because as you guys know, I am a short filmmaker now, working on my third. Not a shameless plug, but so I'm in this group, and the conversation about them turns from us having conversation about the black experience to bashing black British actors for being cast as African Americans. And the thing that bothers me in this, and I think I've actually touched on this a little bit before, is that for so long we wanted to see more black faces, rather it be like the three same ones in rotation. We want to see more black stories, black faces, black actors on film, on TV, on whatever else it is. So then for us to take, and this is why I feel like as much as we want to call out racism, we need to call out the inner racism sometimes that we have even within our own culture. And so like this, and I don't know if I want to label it under the crab in the bucket mentality, or if it's more broad than that. But for us to take almost a black renaissance in film, a new black renaissance in film, that we're getting so many black stories, so many new black actors, and not all of them going to be huge or be blockbuster actors or huge A-listers in the long run. But the fact that we're getting more stories and we're getting exposed to more faces, and then for us to tear ourselves down within because they're not from America. And this is where the whole conversation over nationality and ethnicity, Jesus, I talk so fast sometimes, race and all those being different things. And people don't see that. They don't see how they are being kind of xenophobic within themselves, but xenophobic. So that bothers me. And it's a conversation that I just was completely frustrated that that's what it turned to. And I mean, let me know. And that's not to say that we don't want to see more African Americans cast, but at this point, we are, like I said, to me, where I sit, we're in a new black renaissance when it comes to film and TV. Not everything's great. We're getting a lot of good content, some very solid, amazing level content, and then some things that kind of aren't as good as either one of those. But we're still, if you look at it, we're getting more black projects. And so to tear down because more black faces are being cast by the fact if they're British or anything else, to me, is just like we're missing the point if that's what we're going to start doing and dividing it there, and we're tearing ourselves down from the inside out. So that's just my opinion on that. So in this last couple of things, and we're winding down this In the Mind of Haize segment, that I want to talk about is the new Election Integrity Act in Georgia that went into place, and a lot of you guys may be familiar with it at this point. And that's it's made voting a lot more restrictive, and it's been taken as that it's going to negatively, in fact, impact the black voters more. In that, and some of the rules are like nobody can, like only certain people can offer water, and then longer wait times, and how that contributes, ID restrictions, absentee ballot restrictions, all types of restrictions. I'm not going to break them down into each and every one of them, but there's been a lot of backlash in the black community because of this, and because of this, like Will Smith and a couple of other big name productions have now pulled their production out of Atlanta because of this in support. A couple have chosen to stay. Tyler Perry's one. Tyler Perry, who I look at it different with him, because for Tyler Perry to pull production out of Atlanta would basically mean for him not to use his own production facility that he created, a facility where Bad Boys 3 and Coming to America, the sequel, were both filmed at. So like, and at the same time. So I look at it a little bit differently when it comes to Tyler Perry, and I understand people who say that Tyler Perry, because of his base in Atlanta and because his roots there, and how major Atlanta as a city has been to him, in his rise. I understand why people understand. I also understand why there's some negative backlash to that. But I think we need to keep in mind the fact of, like, it's not like Will Smith, who production, they go to Atlanta to film, where they don't own that studio. They don't own that physical location. So technically they can go and film anywhere. But with Tyler Perry, it's a little bit different. He hasn't said any plans to pull out. Ryan Coogler has said Black Panther 2 isn't moving out of there as well. And I know I gave Marvel props earlier, and Ryan Coogler has said, and I'm glad that I didn't record this initially when this this news came out, because it's giving some time and adding some new context. So what Ryan Coogler is, he's actually part of people who are trying to actually cause change and bring more awareness to the change in Georgia by having their productions there. And so that is a positive thing, that, while, and I'm sure Marvel also, even though Ryan Coogler is the director, I'm sure Marvel has more say than that if they're going to film in Atlanta. Marvel's done a lot of filming in Atlanta. I believe the show that I was just talking about, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was filmed a lot in Atlanta. So I understand both sides of this. I understand why people are pulling out. I understand that you want to try to bring awareness by staying there. You want to try to raise funds, possibly, bring up the morale by filming there, and what that means. But I guess I present this more as a question. How do you guys feel about, because of the new rules and laws in Georgia, about the Black support there? Should more artists be speaking out about this? Should filmmakers pull out of this? What ultimately does that help the cause? If it does, I think ultimately for me, the way that I look at this, and this is me processing it as I'm recording, is that for this to change, we need to keep awareness on it, so that way when the election and voting does come up, the Black community shows out again and turns out and causes some change with these rules, and continues to just go forward and hopefully fix this thing. It's unfortunately, this is just the way that the country works. And Republicans, after the way that the election went, we know that they were going to be trying to do the things that they can in the states that they have footholds in. I wasn't that surprised that they changed it. I was surprised that that it got as much notice as what it did initially at first, because sometimes things like this happen and they're kind of swept under the rug. So I'm glad that even though that this happened, that it's been covered by white outlets, by Black outlets, and that this is the way that if it's going to change, if it's going to get back to more of a fair place, that's the way to go about it. So those are my thoughts on that. That's the End of Mine and Haize segment. I know a pretty lengthy one. The End of Mine and Haize segment is usually a shorter segment. We got pretty in depth there. So we are going to go ahead. We're going to take a brief break. You're going to hear a commercial for another podcast. You're going to hear some music. And then on the other side of that, we're going to jump into what I'm calling the last call. But we got some conversations before we necessarily get into the last call. So we'll talk about that when we get it. Let's go ahead. I'll catch you guys on the other side of this.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.